Have you ever wondered why two people can experience the exact same hardship yet respond in completely different ways? One becomes stronger, wiser, and closer to God. The other becomes bitter, angry, and consumed by despair. Or why someone can have wealth, fame, and everything the world promises will bring happiness, yet still feel empty inside. While another person owns very little, yet walks through life with a peaceful heart that nothing seems to shake. What creates this difference? Is it intelligence? Is it money? Is it opportunity? According to one of the most profound books on Islamic spirituality, the answer lies somewhere much deeper. It lies in the condition of the heart. Not the heart that pumps blood through your body, but the heart that shapes your intentions, your character, your relationship with people, and most importantly, your relationship with Allah. If this video brings you value, take a moment to like it and subscribe to Faith Books. Every week we explore timeless books that help us grow intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. Your support allows us to continue sharing knowledge that can truly transform lives. Now, imagine carrying a priceless mirror everywhere you go. Every decision you make, every conversation you have, every success you celebrate, every failure you endure, that mirror reflects who you truly are. But over time, dust begins to cover it. At first, it's barely noticeable. A little pride after an achievement, a little jealousy towards someone else's success, a little anger that refuses to disappear, a little love for recognition, a little attachment to wealth. None of these seem dangerous on their own. But day after day, year after year, the dust grows thicker. Eventually, the mirror no longer reflects reality. You don't see yourself as you truly are. You see only what your ego wants you to see. This is the central message behind purification of the heart. The greatest danger facing a human being is not poverty. It is not failure. It is not even suffering. The greatest danger is allowing the heart to become spiritually diseased without realizing it. Today, we live in an age where almost everyone is focused on improving the outside. We build stronger bodies. We chase better careers. We decorate our homes. We upgrade our phones. We carefully manage our social media image. Yet none of these measurements appear in the scale that truly matters. Because Allah does not judge us by appearances. He looks at our hearts and our deeds. That changes everything. It means that two people may perform exactly the same action. One earns immense reward, the other earns nothing. Why? Because actions begin long before they become visible. They begin with intention, and intention is born inside the heart. This is why scholars throughout Islamic history considered the purification of the heart to be more important than mastering countless external actions. A beautiful tree cannot grow if its roots are poisoned. Likewise, beautiful actions cannot remain sincere if the heart itself has become corrupt. One of the most fascinating ideas presented in this book is that every human being is fighting two battles at the same time. The first battle is obvious. It is the battle against the challenges of life: financial pressure, family problems, health issues, loss, temptation, stress. These are the battles everyone can see. But there is another battle, a silent battle, a hidden battle, a battle that nobody else can witness, the battle taking place inside your own heart. Every single day, your heart is being pulled in different directions. One voice invites you toward humility. Another whispers pride. One voice encourages forgiveness. Another demands revenge. One voice reminds you to trust Allah. Another fills you with anxiety about the future. One voice teaches gratitude. Another convinces you that you never have enough. Every decision you make strengthens one of these voices. Little by little, your heart begins to take shape. The remarkable thing is that hearts are never truly standing still. They are either becoming healthier or becoming sicker. There is no permanent neutral state. Just as the body requires nourishment every day, The soul also requires nourishment. If you stop feeding your body, it weakens. If you stop feeding your heart, it also weakens. But unlike physical illness, spiritual illness often hides itself. Someone suffering from a physical disease usually feels pain. That pain motivates them to seek treatment. The diseases of the heart work differently. Pride often feels like confidence. Greed disguises itself as ambition. Envy pretends to be fairness. Arrogance calls itself self-respect. Showing off appears to be inspiration. The illness convinces you that you are healthy. That is what makes it so dangerous. This is why sincere self-reflection is one of the greatest acts of worship, not because it makes you feel guilty, but because it helps you see reality. The scholars often compared the heart to fertile soil. Whatever you plant there will eventually grow. Plant gratitude, peace begins to grow. Plant remembrance of Allah, contentment grows. Plant sincerity, character grows. But plant resentment, bitterness grows. Plant envy, misery grows. Plant arrogance, isolation grows. Eventually, the harvest becomes impossible to hide. Your words begin to reveal what your heart contains. Your reactions expose your inner condition. Your relationships become a reflection of your spiritual state. This explains why two people can hear the same advice yet respond completely differently. One accepts it with humility. The other becomes offended. The difference isn't intelligence. The difference is the condition of the heart receiving the message. Perhaps one of the most uncomfortable truths in the entire book is that many people spend years correcting other people's faults while completely ignoring their own. We notice every mistake our friends make, every weakness in our families, every flaw in society, yet we rarely pause long enough to ask ourselves a much harder question. What diseases are quietly growing inside my own heart? Because true transformation never begins by changing everyone around us, it begins by changing ourselves. And that journey begins with honesty. Not honesty with other people, honesty with yourself. The willingness to admit that no matter how religious, successful, knowledgeable, or respected we become, every single one of us carries a heart that requires constant purification. Just as a mirror gathers dust every day, the heart also gathers spiritual dust every day. Ignoring that dust doesn't make it disappear. It simply allows it to accumulate until we can no longer recognize ourselves. The beautiful news is that no heart is beyond healing. No matter how dark it has become, no matter how many mistakes have been made, as long as a person is alive, the door to purification remains open. But healing begins with one simple step: recognizing that the disease exists. And in the next part of this journey, we'll explore the first diagnosis the book presents, the different states of the human heart, and how understanding them may completely change the way you see yourself and your relationship with Allah.
In the previous part, we explored a simple but unsettling idea, that the real battle of life is not outside of us, it is inside the heart. But once we accept this idea, a new question naturally arises. If the heart can become sick, then what does a healthy heart actually look like? And more importantly, how do we know where we stand? In Purification of the Heart, one of the most powerful insights is that the human heart is never just fine or not fine. It always exists in three states: a living heart, a struggling heart, or a dead heart. These are not poetic descriptions. They are spiritual realities that shape how a person sees truth, life, and their purpose. Let's begin with the first. A living heart is a heart that is awake. It is sensitive to truth. It reacts when reminded of Allah. It feels guilt when it sins, and it feels peace when it returns. This is the kind of heart that does not insist on being right at all costs. Instead, it searches for what is right, even if it means admitting mistakes. A living heart is not perfect, but it is responsive, and that responsiveness is what keeps it alive. Then there is the second state, the struggling heart. This is the heart most people have. It is a heart pulled in two directions. Sometimes it leans towards good, sometimes towards weakness. One day it feels spiritually strong. The next day it feels distant and distracted. It wants to improve, but it is weighed down by habits, desires, and distractions. This heart is in a constant internal conflict, and that conflict is actually a sign of life, because a dead heart does not struggle, it simply stops caring. Which brings us to the third state, the dead heart. This is not a heart that has stopped beating physically. It is a heart that no longer responds to spiritual truth. It hears reminders, but they pass through without impact. It sees signs, but they are ignored. It becomes numb. Over time, what once felt wrong begins to feel normal, and what once felt heavy on the conscience no longer feels like anything at all. The most dangerous part of a dead heart is not that it commits mistakes, but that it no longer recognizes them as mistakes. At this stage, a person can still be active in life, successful even, respected even, but internally, something essential has been lost. Now here's the difficult truth the book forces us to confront. No one wakes up one day with a dead heart. It is not sudden, it is gradual. It happens through small compromises, small justifications, small neglects of self-reflection. A missed prayer that becomes normal, a harmful habit that becomes routine, a wrong intention that is never corrected, a sin that is repeated until guilt disappears. Each step seems insignificant on its own, but together they slowly change the condition of the heart. This is why spiritual awareness is so important, because hearts do not announce when they are deteriorating. They quietly drift. Now, once we understand these three states, the book takes us deeper. It explains that the main reason hearts become diseased is not lack of knowledge. It is the presence of internal illnesses that distort perception. And these illnesses are often so subtle that they disguise themselves as personality traits. One of the most dangerous of these is pride. Pride is not simply thinking you are better than others. It's rejecting truth when it comes from someone you consider below you. It's refusing correction because it threatens your self-image. Pride doesn't always look arrogant on the outside. Sometimes it looks like confidence. Sometimes it looks like strong opinions. Sometimes it looks like I already know this. But inside it blocks growth, because a proud heart cannot be corrected, and a heart that cannot be corrected cannot be purified. Then there is envy in intention, showing off. This is one of the most subtle diseases, because it does not require changing what you do, only why you do it. A good deed becomes fragile when it is done for people instead of for Allah. The same action can become either a source of reward or a source of emptiness, depending entirely on intention. This is why the heart is described as the place where value is determined, not the action itself, but the reason behind it. And perhaps the most overlooked disease of all is emotional attachment to the world. Not living in the world, but being owned by it. When the world becomes the center of the heart, everything else begins to lose meaning. Success becomes never enough, loss becomes unbearable, and peace becomes conditional. Now at this point, something important becomes clear. All these diseases share a common root. They distort how we see reality. A proud heart sees itself too large. An envious heart sees others too favored. A showing-off heart sees people too important. An attached heart sees the world as permanent. In every case, perception is no longer accurate. And when perception is distorted, decisions follow the distortion. This is why two people can live in the same world, yet experience completely different realities. One sees blessings everywhere, the other sees lack everywhere. One feels peace with little, the other feels unrest with much. The difference is not in the world, the difference is in the heart observing the world. And as long as the heart remains unexamined, a person may never understand why they feel the way they feel. This is why purification is not optional in spiritual life, it is essential. Because without it, even good actions can lose their meaning, even knowledge can become pride, even worship can become performance, even success can become a burden. The next part will go deeper into these hidden diseases and how they quietly shape behavior, emotions, and relationships in everyday life, and why most people never notice them until it is too late.
By now, one truth should already be becoming clear. The condition of the heart is not a theoretical idea. It is not something abstract reserved only for scholars or spiritual discussion. It is something that directly shapes how you live every single day. Your emotions, your relationships, your reactions, even your sense of peace or anxiety. All of it is connected to what is happening inside the heart. But the most dangerous aspect of spiritual diseases is that they rarely appear as diseases at all. They disguise themselves. They hide behind normal human behavior, and sometimes they even feel justified. Let's begin with one of the most destructive emotions a human being can experience: anger. Anger itself is not always wrong, but uncontrolled anger is different. It clouds judgment, it destroys patience, it turns small problems into large conflicts, and in many cases it leaves behind regret that cannot be undone. A person in anger often feels powerful in the moment, but afterward they are left dealing with the consequences of words they cannot take back. This is why the book emphasizes restraint, not suppression of emotion, but control over reaction. Because true strength is not in how intensely you react, it is in how wisely you respond. Then we move to something even subtler: pride in disguise. Not the obvious arrogance, where someone openly feels superior, but the quiet version. The kind that refuses advice, the kind that dismisses correction, the kind that silently believes, "I already understand better." This form of pride is dangerous because it does not feel like pride. It feels like independence, it feels like confidence, it feels like self-sufficiency. But internally, it blocks growth. Because growth requires humility, and humility requires the ability to say, "I might be wrong." Another hidden disease is envy, but in its modern form. In today's world, envy is constantly triggered. Social media has turned comparison into a daily habit. People are exposed to the highlights of thousands of lives, while only seeing their own behind-the-scenes struggles. And slowly, without noticing, the heart begins to measure its worth against images that were never complete in the first place. Envy does not always show itself as hatred. Sometimes it shows up as sadness after scrolling, or dissatisfaction with your own life, or the feeling that others are always ahead. But the result is the same: inner unrest, a loss of gratitude, and a constant sense of deficiency. Then there is one of the most spiritually dangerous diseases: showing off. Not necessarily in obvious acts of worship, but in subtle intentions, wanting recognition, wanting approval, wanting to be seen as good, righteous, or successful. The problem with showing off is not the action itself, it is the dependence on people's opinions. Because when human approval becomes the goal, sincerity disappears quietly, and what remains is exhaustion. Always trying to maintain an image, always fearing judgment, always adjusting behavior based on how it will be perceived. A heart in this state can never rest, because people's approval is never stable. Then comes another powerful disease: attachment to the world. Not simply enjoying life, but depending on it for meaning. When the world becomes the center of the heart, everything else shifts. Loss becomes inevitable, because it feels like identity is being taken away. Success becomes addictive because it feels like identity must constantly be proven, and peace becomes conditional, only present when everything is going well. But the moment something changes, the heart collapses into anxiety. The book reminds us that this world was never meant to be a permanent home for the heart. It is a temporary journey, and when the heart treats it as permanent, suffering is inevitable. Now, if we step back and observe all these diseases together, something important becomes clear. They are not random. They are deeply connected. Anger comes from ego being challenged. Envy comes from comparison. Showing off comes from need for validation. Attachment to the world comes from forgetting the hereafter. At the root of them all is imbalance, a heart that has lost its center. And when the center is lost, everything else becomes unstable. This is why people can be successful externally, yet deeply unsettled internally. They may achieve goals they once dreamed of, yet feel emptier than before, because external achievement cannot heal internal imbalance. Only internal purification can do that. And here is one of the most important realizations the book leads us towards. Most people do not suffer because their lives are bad. They suffer because their hearts interpret life incorrectly. Two people can lose the same opportunity. One sees it as protection, the other sees it as failure. Two people can face the same difficulty. One grows through it, the other breaks under it. The difference is not the event, it is the heart processing the event. And this is why spiritual awareness is not optional. It is essential for emotional stability. Without it, a person becomes a prisoner of their reactions. But with it, even hardship can become meaningful. Even delay can become wisdom. Even loss can become redirection. The heart is not just where emotions live, it is where meaning is created. And when meaning is pure, life becomes lighter, even when circumstances are heavy. In the final part, we will move from diagnosis to treatment, because understanding the disease is not the end of the journey, it is only the beginning. The real transformation begins when we learn how to purify the heart in daily life, step by step, in a practical and sustainable way.
At this point in the journey, something important has become clear. The real struggle in life is not external. It is not about circumstances, wealth, or status. It is about the condition of the heart. But recognizing the problem is only the beginning. Awareness without action changes nothing. So the question now becomes, how does a person actually purify the heart? Not in theory, but in real daily life. The first and most important step is something simple, yet extremely difficult for many people. Honesty with yourself. Not the kind of honesty you show to others, but the kind that happens in private moments when no one is watching. It is the willingness to admit, I have flaws I need to work on. I have intentions that are not always pure. I have emotions I need to control. Without this level of honesty, nothing begins, because a heart that denies its illness cannot be healed. The second step is consistent self-reflection. Not occasional reflection, but daily awareness. Taking a moment to ask, why did I say that? Why did I react like that? Why did I feel jealous in that moment? Why did I seek attention in that situation? These questions may seem small, but they slowly rebuild awareness inside the heart. And awareness is the beginning of change. The third step is repentance, not as a feeling of despair, but as a return to balance, a return to clarity, a return to purpose. In Islamic spirituality, repentance is not meant to break a person, it is meant to rebuild them. Every time the heart becomes heavy with mistakes, repentance cleanses it and allows it to start again. The fourth step is remembrance, because a heart that forgets becomes vulnerable, but a heart that remembers stays alive. Remembrance of Allah is not only repetition of words, it is awareness. It is reconnecting the heart to its Creator throughout the day. in moments of stress, in moments of success, in moments of confusion, the heart returns to remembrance and slowly regains stability. The fifth step is controlling the environment of the heart. Because hearts are influenced, they are shaped by what they are exposed to. A person surrounded by negativity begins to absorb negativity. A person surrounded by arrogance begins to normalize arrogance. A person surrounded by sincerity begins to grow sincerity. This is why companionship is so important. The people around you either elevate your heart or slowly pull it downward. Even without words, even without intention, influence is constant. The sixth step is patience with yourself. Purification is not a straight line. There will be progress and there will be setbacks, moments of clarity and moments of weakness. The mistake is not falling. The mistake is believing you cannot stand up again. Because the heart is not purified in a single moment. It is purified through continuous return, again and again, until change becomes natural. Now, if we put all of this together, a clear picture appears. A purified heart is not a perfect heart. It is a responsive heart. A heart that notices when it is drifting and returns. A heart that recognizes when it is being influenced and corrects itself. A heart that may fall but does not stay fallen. And this is one of the most powerful truths in the entire book. Allah does not ask for perfection. He asks for sincerity, for effort, for return, and for truthfulness of intention. Because in the end, every human being will meet Allah with only one thing that truly matters: the state of their heart. Not their appearance, not their achievements, not their social status, but their heart. So the real question is not, what have I achieved in this world? The real question is, what am I becoming inside? Because everything else will eventually disappear, but the heart continues, and it carries everything we have built within it. As we reach the end of this journey, reflect on this. Every day, your heart is being shaped by your thoughts, by your choices, by your reactions, by your intentions. The question is not whether your heart is changing. The question is, in what direction is it changing? Towards clarity or towards confusion? Towards peace or towards unrest? Towards remembrance or towards forgetfulness? The answer is built in the small decisions you make every single day, and change begins the moment you decide to pay attention. If you found value in this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to Faith Books for more deep and meaningful book summaries that help you grow intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally. And remember, the greatest success is not what you achieve in the world, but the state in which you meet your Creator. Take care of your heart, because everything begins there.